Scrappers, by becoming a Patreon supporter, not only will you receive market news that other scrappers don't get, you will give us the ability to make more videos, more podcasts, and show you more ways to make more money with your scrap by becoming a Patreon supporter today. Hey scrappers, it's Tom from the iScrap app, and in this episode of Scrap You Later, we're going to talk about something that's hot, but not something that you want to see happen, and that's fires and how to prevent them and make sure that you have procedures and protocols in place to protect yourself, and we'll tell you a little bit about what we do at our scrapyard. But before we talk about that, make sure you follow us on your Spotify podcast, your Apple podcast accounts. This way, when any new episode of Scrap You Later comes out, not only can you learn more about the industry, you can learn more about metals, you can learn more about prices, and of course, we're here to help you make more money with your scrap. So here at Rockaway Recycling, we have all types of different protocols in place to watch out for fires. And as we're not as heavy into the ferrous side of things, we don't have piles of steel outside, we're not torching things, we don't have as much of a fire risk, but that doesn't mean that we don't take it very seriously. And I'll tell you some of the things that we do at our scrapyard where maybe you could apply it to your own business. And if you're scrapping on the side, it might be something that you just keep in mind moving forward. At any place inside of our scrapyard where you stand, you can see a fire extinguisher. So right off the bat, I took the concept out of college where they have the blue lights all over the place. Instead, anyone was feeling unsafe, they felt uncomfortable. The object at colleges is wherever you stand, you can see one of these blue lights, and they're so different than, regular everyday crossing lights or green, yellow, and red traffic lights. These blue lights stick out, so if there's ever a problem, you can quickly identify them, run to them, press a button, campus police or campus security will be alerted. And that has prevented massive amounts of problems throughout colleges. And I took that idea, that concept, and I applied it here at Rockaway Recycling when it came to fires. I said that at any place that you stand, whether it's in a hallway, in an office, or out in the yard, you can see a fire extinguisher. And one of the best things that I did was realize that I don't know everything. So I called our local fire marshal. I brought him in because we have our yearly inspections, but we like to be proactive. And I brought him in. His name was also Tom. And I said, can you give us advice on things that you see that we can do better? And he goes, well, I love that you have your fire extinguishers around, but what you should do is paint a big red stripe. This way, when you train your staff and your team to look around, especially when a fire is happening, you don't want to be searching all over the place. That big red stripe will lead you directly to the fire extinguisher, and then it helps you just learn. One of the next things he told us to do was he just asked if everyone was trained on fire extinguishers. And people see fire extinguishers. You probably grew up and had one underneath your sink, but if you've never used one, it's really important to know the word pass. One of the things that we taught all of our team members was the word pass. And we're not talking about baseballs or footballs, but knowing the acronym PASS when it comes to fires. Pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. And what does that mean? Well, think about a fire extinguisher. You need to pull the pin out, you need to squeeze on it, but before you do, you need to know where you have to aim. So that's why it goes pull, aim the hose, squeeze it, and sweep left and right, back and forth. And we've trained our team, and we go over it multiple times a year to aim towards the bottom or the base of the fire. So on the rare occasion that we do have a fire at Rockaway Recycling, we have walkie-talkies where we make everyone alerted that there's an issue. If there's an internal fire alarm, those go off. But if it's out in the yard, especially during the summertime when you have extreme heat, we have different reactions and different protocols. And if you haven't practiced with a fire extinguisher, I think that you should. And while you might say, Tom, I don't want to waste $40 on practicing on a fire extinguisher, it's really not that expensive because buying the canister is the most expensive part. If you find a local fire company that can refill it for you, it's only going to cost you $5 to $20 to refill a fire extinguisher depending on the size, and it's a really good service. And sometimes you can go to them, sometimes they're traveling and they can come to you if you have multiple extinguishers. But just knowing how to use one and where to pull, where to aim, where to squeeze, how to sweep left and right, back and forth, and then working as a team, if there's ever an issue, you'll know what to do. Now, to take this and apply it to the everyday scrapper, I'll ask you a real simple question. Do you have a fire extinguisher in your truck? If the answer is no, I implore you to go down to your local store. We always like supporting local, so if you can find a local business that does supply fire extinguishers or refills them, it might be a little more expensive, but you'll have a really nice connection and you'll have a history in their system, so when you need to refill it or get it inspected, you might have it done at a cheaper, less expensive rate, and it just helps you out long term. And once you buy one, you always want to set reminders. With smartphones nowadays, you can say, hey Siri, in 1 year, remind me to get my fire extinguisher, checked or recertified. And a year later, because you forgot, because you were so busy scrapping, it might pop up, hey, it's time to get your fire extinguisher checked. It's time to get it recertified. And we do monthly inspections here just to make sure that everything is clean, the pins are in place, and then we have our yearly inspections with both the town and the state, because we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing, that we're protecting our team members. And if you're out there by yourself, you want to be able to cover your own butt. You want to protect yourself when you're out there, because if anything ever happens, you might be able to put out a potential fire quicker than you could ever call 911 to get the fire department there. And knowing where you're working, where if there's water access, if there's a hose that works, if it's the winter time, are there hose bibs that are freeze protection? Are they not? And you need to have something in place like a big water tote full of water to protect yourself. These are all things that you really need to keep in mind when you're going and trying to protect yourself, protect your customers, protect your business, and protect the surroundings. We see so many fires throughout scrap yards where we've seen some really cool companies that have come out with robot fire extinguishers where they're positioned really high in the air. They have cameras attached to them with infrared, and they can detect when there's a heat problem, when smoke arises either during work hours or after work hours. And both are equally important, because putting a fire out early or later is always going to be, you always want to go for the early side of things. But by having these different protocols in place, even if it's in your own head, I have a fire extinguisher behind my driver's seat, or if you're driving a roll-off or a box truck, you want to make sure that you have one inside there. Because we had a driver who had an overheating tire in a previous summer, and he saw some smoke coming up. He realized that there was an issue, pulled his truck over, took his fire extinguisher out, because generally where there's smoke, there's fire. The old adage holds true. And he was able to successfully, there wasn't a fire, but the one tire was starting to heat up. And once it started to heat up, he did start to have that smoke. He was able to put it out. Someone came, replaced the tire. No one was hurt. The extinguisher was filled the next day. He was on the road the same day, all because of proper training. Now, scrappers, you might say to yourself, Tom, this has never happened to me. Why do I need to think about this? Because things happen when you least expect them. And being preventative, having forward thinking, these are going to be the things that protect you in the long run, because that one time that it happens and you're able to nip it in the bud, you're going to be happy that you listened to this podcast. If you have any stories about fires that you would like to share with us, good or bad, or how you learned from them, we would love to hear them from you. And we'd love to feature you in one of our own podcasts talking about scrapper stories. Scrappers, this is Tom from the iScrap app. Please make sure you follow us through our Apple or our Spotify podcast accounts. We hope to talk to you soon, and until then, I'll scrap you later.